نجدد الحمد لله ونثني بالصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أما بعد أحبتي في الله أحباب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. We continue talking about تاريخ المصحف الشريف, the history of the most noble book. And that sacred journey is very important for us to reconnect us with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to give us the strength and the knowledge that to refute any doubts or any misconceptions that related to this beautiful book. And something we need to understand that the oral transmission and the writing was hand by hand, going better. It's not in sequence one after the other. As you know that when the Prophet received the Quran, he insists somebody is writing. So writing, it's another extra layer or a step to preserve the Quran. However, Allah promised to preserve it, and the most important part, that in the heart of the believers. Let's today destroy all copies of the Quran and throw it in the ocean. In less than an hour, the Quran can come back and people write it down. So the writing, as with some people say, oh, was written after Muhammad. No, was written in the presence of Muhammad. But it's a secondary, it's not the main things, which is important. I'm not saying it's not important. Looking at the Mus'haf, just looking at the Mus'haf, at the words of Allah, it's an act of worship. It's ibadah. As looking to Kaaba is ibadah and a sort of mercy, and looking at your parent with kindness. ليس بعين شزر. With a nice look to your parent, it's ibadah. Just looking, sitting and looking at them. But do not go and start staring at your parents and say, oh, Shaykh said this is ibadah, you know. You make them uncomfortable. And the best ni'mah ever that between our hand is the Quran. Because this is one of the attributes. It's some of one of the attributes of Allah, something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the haqiqah. That's everything here with us is makhlooq, except the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is from Allah subhanahu. This is a great honor to have attachment to it. It's an honor to study it. An honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enabled you to read it. Wallahi, I cannot imagine my life without Quran. We need to reconnect ourselves to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we are having that morning talk about the book of Allah. And whatever you do, or whatever you talk about the book of Allah, you cannot give the right of Quran and speak about as supposed to be. But we need just to have more attachment to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at least to know how, the Sahaba and their followers took care of the Quran. And they did a great job as passing the Quran nation after a nation. Now when you talk about Quran and tawatur, you didn't need even to talk about the chain of narrations. The chain of narrations and ilm al-hadith, it's apply on the hadith al-ahad. The single narrations that never reach the level of tawatur. That's the hadith terminology. So you don't even need to apply that on the Quran. The Quran is mutawatir. Which means a group of people, thousands of people, pass it to other thousands, to other thousands. So there's no need even to discuss the chain of narrations of the Quran, because never being cut off and will never be cut off. And a lot of people think that people later on, or maybe after the time Sayyidina Uthman, they have took the Quran from the Mus'haf. And that's a major mistake. Sayyidina Uthman, yes, sent copies of Quran to different regions, Amsar. But more importantly, he sent Qari with each Mus'haf. And then people were studying from the Qari, not from the Mus'haf. And in fact, most of them, they didn't have access to those Mus'hafs. So the chain of narration never ever cut off and will never be cut off. It's always there. So the writing, it is important, but it should not take us from the most important things, that, the oral transmission and how the Quran was conveyed. During the time of Sayyidina Umar, the Ummah revived around the Quran. And always he's insisting people to read the Quran and take the Quran more than any other part of knowledge. He heard that some people coming from Iraq side, they have a knowledge of hadith, they have other knowledge. He came to meet with them at the border of Medina. And he told them, إنكم تقدمون على أهل قرية لهم دوي بالقرآن كدوي النحل فلا تشغلهم بالرواية. He said to them, you are arriving at a city, they recite Quran as as bees, sound, they read the Quran. And I witnessed that, in our style reading, like you find in a place like this, hundreds of students, each one busy with himself reading. You might think it's disturbing. No, it's a nice background. Everybody's reading, and you read and you get inside to a night. So they said, you came, you are coming and approaching people. لهم دوي بالقرآن كدوي النحل. They are busy with the Quran. Do not make them busy with something else, with other riwayah, other things. Let them focus on that. And actually, they told Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, أكنت تحدث زمن عمر كما تحدثنا. He used to make the riwayah and sitting and teach people hadith at the time Sayyidina Umar, as you do now. He said, لو فعلت لضربني. If I did that, he will hit me. Because he wants people to focus on the Quran. It does not mean he's neglecting the Sunnah, no. There is no much even need to the riwayah at that time, because it was pure society. And even as the scholars later said, لما كثر الكذب في الناس استعمل لهم التاريخ. When the people start lying and there's some other people, there's questioning and there's political movement, they said use the history. And that time they brought the riwayah and has to be supporting their opinion, and in the same time to bring people back on track. So even the riwayah was to make the ummah stay on the sunnah. But what do you think about a nation? There's no bid'ah in there, and there's all sunnah. There's no much need for the riwayah at that time. People still carrying the hadith, but the more important, they focus on the Quran. So that's how it was. During the time Sayyidina Umar, he took care of the katatib, they called kutab, the place of teaching Quran. He even assigned people to teach Quran on a daily basis, and that's their assignment. They said even he made like kind of a hadiyah or salary for them, because he wants people to focus teaching Quran. That's how it's widely, spread among them, where you find in every household, almost like in every household, a hafiz and somebody take care of Quran. And people continue like that. During the time Sayyidina Uthman, where even the area and ruq'ah of Islam, the land of Muslims, widely spread, and mashallah, the Khilafah almost cover what's called the Qarat continent. Yes, it could be like here and there in Africa, and North Africa, and in a little of Asia that back then, went different places, and it happened when they meet, they discuss about Quran. That's their favorite subject. I'm not sure what is the favorite subject when we meet. About these days arrive around food, yes? Sambusa and basbousa and what talking about these days? Maybe weather? About technology, about trends, and I don't know, different, talks nowadays. I don't know, what are you talking about like these days? Money? Yeah. Okay. But the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and all that, their talks is Quran. So let's recite, let's talk, let's explain. And it happened in one day, the talks get heated. And Hudayfa radiallahu ta'ala anhu was there. He was not happy with that when he saw them about to fight. And maybe like some of them get very excited and start accusing the others. What you are doing, it's wrong. What this type of recitation? So similar things happen when the Prophet was among them, and he solved it. Do you remember the story I told you about Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu? When he was listening to somebody who was reciting part of the Quran different from his recitation? Do you remember what I told you about Abdullah ibn Mas'ud? So when they came to Rasulullah, he told Umar, when he listened from his recitation, listened to the other person's recitation, he said, أنزل القرآن على سبعة حرف فقرأ وما تيسر منه كل شاف كاف. And he left it like this. When Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he came and has issue with the other Sahabi, he told them, كلاكم محسن. After he heard each of them, كلاكم محسن ولا تختلفوا فإن من كان قبلكم اختلفوا فهلكوا. But now, what's going to happen? Who's their reference to tell them, calm down and you are fine, you are fine? So Sayyidina Hudayfa, he came all the way from Armenia or Bijan when he was there at the battlefield, and he came to Medina, to Darul Khilafah, and he addressed that with Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. وكان في بعض مغزاهم حذيفة فجاء عثمان مذعورا فقال له أخاف أن يخلطوا فأدرك البشر فاستحضر الصحف الأولى التي جمعت وخص زيدا ومن قريشه نفر على لسان قريش فاكتبوه كما على الرسول إنزاله انتشر وصار في نسخ فجردوه كما يهوى كتابته ما فيه شكل ولا نقط فيحتجر وصار في نسخ منها مع المدني كوف وشام وبصر تملأ البصر وقيل مكة والبحرين مع يمن ضاعت بها نسخ في نشرها قطرة. So he suggested that he has to do something. So at that time, Sayyidina Uthman, he took it seriously. And he sent a request to Sayyida Hafsa to give him the copies that was written at the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So she agreed to lend it to him, to give it to him with the condition that he will return it back to her. So she gave it to him. So that's one of their main reference. the first work, they never neglected. And that is important. And then he assigned is the same person, the one he's familiar with this work. It's amazing. It's a great honor and a great responsibility. Do you remember his name? Zayd ibn Thabit. Zayd ibn Thabit. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And Sa'id ibn al-As. And Abdul Rahman. لا, it's not Ibn Auf. No. So a great group of Sahaba, he assigned them to write, the Quran, to be that committee, to work, on this assignment. And he gave them directions. He gave them directions. And he said to them, whatever you different from you and Zayd, uktubuhu bilisani Quraysh. Because Zayd, he was not from Quraysh, but he told him bilisani Quraysh because that's how it was revealed. And when the scholars talk about it, maybe they have one word that they talk about it, dispute about it, according to Lisan Quraysh, different from their Lisan. The word at-tabut. Is it at-tabuh or at-tabut when they stop on the word? Is it ta maftuha or ta marbuta? So they wrote it as Quraysh pronounced it, with ta maftuha. You see, they are very careful. And do not think it's a random, the way how they written the Quran. No, it was very specific. Another condition, he told them, write it in a way that could combine multiple ways of recitation. So could pronounce this and the other. So preserve even the different ways of the recitation. Like for example, Maliki and Maliki. It's two ways that Rasulullah taught the Sahaba. They cannot make one, not the other. So how they wrote it? They wrote it with no alif, with no mad. Because basically you could add those as vowels, as harakat. And when you open the Mus'haf, you find Im, Mim, Lam, Kaf. Im, L, K, with no vowel. But then if you want to read it as a Maliki, you make a vowel in there. So it fits with both. Like Majlis and Majalis. So this way, when you write it with no mad, so you could write it, read it Majlis and Majalis when you put the vowels. And as I told you, is what's more important, the Qari, not the Mus'haf. Because in both, it looks the same. How they differentiate between Majlis and Majalis? The Qari, the one he will teach. So he told him that's how he should write it. But how about the words that it cannot be combined? They neglected. How the word that it's impossible to write it in one shape. Like for example, Sari'u wa Sari'u. There's one riwayah with waw. And both the Prophet taught them. ويقول الذين أن يقول الذين الذين اتخذوا والذين اتخذوا فلا يخاف عقباها ولا يخاف عقباها فإن الله هو الغني الحميد فإن الله الغني الحميد. So this such, differences between the ways of recitations, it cannot be contained in one way. First of all, are those too many? No. It's only 13 positions, as Imam Al-Kisai wrote in his book Mutashabih al-Quran. So throughout the differences, all of that, it these ways. So there are of them, there's an and, or some of them there's a relative pronoun, like huwa, or like what's called pronoun itself, like or a preposition, like a or fa, something like this. So those slight differences for a wisdom. We're gonna come back to those, but in the way of writing, how it should be written in that way. They were smart, very smart. Imagine if they put it at the margin, al-hamish. They might think the one inside more authentic than one outside, or they might think the one outside is correction for the one inside, but they never did that. So they kept it in one copy with this style, with this way, in the other copy with the different style, different way. So that's how. You get it? Okay. So they had the first one original copy they called Al-Mushaf al-Imam. Not because of Mushaf al-Imam, because it related to Imam Uthman, but Imam, that's the main copy. As they made other copies from it, and they included those differences in there. They did very great job. And at the time, was very simple font. No vowels, no dots. Nothing in there. It's not that easy to read it. Unless you focus on that and you're familiar with those type of writing. Even sometimes at that time, maybe the same word, when the line ended, they would continue to, on the other line. Like alladhina. Alladhi, and then ya and noon in the other line could be. That's their style at the time. It's a beautiful writing. It's a great job with the simple tools that they have. And those copies was sent here and there. Is those copies still exist? First of all, it's there or not, it does not add any, to the level of authenticity of the Quran. But there are some claims that the original one's still there. However, Imam Malik, who is from Tabi'ut Tabi'een, he said, I have not seen that Mus'haf of an Imam that's in Medina. وقال مالك مصحف عثمان تغيب فلم يجد له بين الأنام أثرا. So he mentioned that we have not seen it. That the original Mus'haf was not there. Does not mean that it was destroyed and maybe was hidden for any reasons, but he have not seen it. There are some claims that there are some of those old ones, and they testify that with even new method of finding, the age of the material. They mentioned that there's a copy in Tashkent, in the Azerbaijan. It's a part of Russia at that time. The Soviet Union. And actually, they print copy of it on a plate of gold, old pages. Subhanallah. I have seen some of those, in those plates gold. with like you see the letters engraved, the engraving, like it's there. And they said there's a copy in Egypt. I've seen that copy as well. They said there's a copy in Turkey. I've seen that copy as well. And they mentioned there are some claims that there's few pages in UK. They said that's among the oldest one, and they discovered by chance. There are few pages in France. I've seen those ones. And I have a photocopy almost for all of those I mentioned. If any of you interested, I'll show you that. I was interested in to see and collected copies of all. It's interesting, to know that. But it's not that important. As scholars, those that have seen it, they told us and described us all of those words, how it's what's written, all of these, what's in there. So we have a knowledge of all of those copies, what's in there. And this, what I'm telling you, it's really important. As the first copies, how you see and how it's developed and all of that, in a way, make it easier to read. And the addition, we're going to talk about it, when they add the dots, the vowels, and first being added, actually, the vowel before the dots. And those vowels used to be dots. These dots for those vowels. And then they add the other dots, and they went back to the old dots, and they changed it as vowels, as signs. And then they add many other things. If at time they will see, there's a need to add something to make it easier for people to read. Which it's a beautiful, that tells you how the Ummah take care of the Quran. Now, what happened to other copies? Sayyidina Uthman, when he sent those copies here and there, he asked everyone from Sahaba and others if they have copies. If they have copies, they should omit it. Yes. So, if they have copies, they should, omit it, wash it, burn it. It's fine. And it's nothing wrong to burn the Mus'haf with the intention to protect it. However, I would recommend that to bury the ashes. Because even sometimes we burn something, you still can read. There's a protection. So maybe put some water in there, bury the ashes. That will be the best to practice. So the committee that's a work on that, we mentioned Zayd ibn Thabit, Sa'id ibn al-As, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and Abdul Rahman ibn Subhanallah, ibn al-Harith ibn Hisham. Yes. And the main person that in there is Sayyidina Uthman. He's the one who gave them directions. He's the one who's following up with that work until all that's, completed. And as I said, he kept the main copy in there. In Medina, some scholars, they said there are two. There's the main copy, and there's another copy was made out of it. That's, that's in Medina. Some, they said it's only one, and the other one sent, to other regions. And that's how this, after they learn from it. And that's how later each region has kind of a style of qira'ah that is a little bit unique from the other place. But at least he united the way of recitation within the region. And he contained that fitna, it might happen at that time. It was a beautiful work, and it's important work. And that's why later on, when they talk about, they said, this is according to Al-Rasm al-Uthmani. This is according to Al-Rasm al-Uthmani. So the Kitaba has a Rasm and Dabat. Rasm is the structure of the word. How you look, it looks, the shape of it. All this, what added dots, vowels, and even hams, the hams, that is part of Dabat. So we have Rasm and we have ضبط. So two different part of knowledge. And we have the khat, the font. The font is different. It's just the shape of the letters with that rules was developed later as well. But that's another field that's not has nothing to do with the rasm. So a rasm something, a dabt something, and al khat something else. A khat is just to beautify the way of writing and different style. And a dabt was added later from dots and vowels and all of other signs. And a rasm, that's the most important part, which is the main structure of the word. This is, how it's beautiful. But anyway, as I said, we're gonna talk more about it, and we understand even the way of writing. It's something, I would say, miraculous. As even many scholars believe, that's a way of writing, especially Arabic. It's a part of the revelation. So we're gonna talk more about this. Hope that will be clear. At least we acknowledge those efforts from those companions of the Prophet ﷺ, how they did a great job of making it easier for the ummah. Where now just you grab the Mus'haf and read, and thousands of years, thousands of efforts, thousands of people, they worked together until they made it very accessible and easier for us to read the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that in the record of hasanat. Jazallahu bil khayrati anna ha'ulai al-a'immah. ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يجعل كل أعمالهم وكل من يقرأ في هذا المصحف في صحائف أعمالهم. آمين. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وبلغنا في الدار مطلوبنا. اللهم نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. آمين. السلام عليكم. That last 2 minutes? Oh, let me close the live streaming at least. Maybe you can close from there. Salam.